Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Mercury V. Apaw, and together with me is Justine Lewis Yap, Jermery Cuestas, and Nazar May Angana. And today, we will be presenting to you the Bachelor of Science in Development Communication second-year students case study entitled The Rivalry Between Supporters of the Philippine Presidential Candidates in the 2022 Elections. To begin, an election is a process through which a political leader or government representative is elected through voting. Voting is a primary mechanism through which the majority of citizens can influence government decisions in a democracy. When the government organizes elections, citizens are given the right to vote. To win an election, politicians must acquire the support of the voters. Each political party must detail its policies and what they would do if elected, and this political party develops a list of policies that if elected, they pledge to enact, and this is called a platform. Citizens vote anonymously by marking a ballot and depositing it in a sealed box that is not opened until after all the polls shut down. During the 2022 elections, the Philippines is still recovering from the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic. With only about one-third of the population fully immunized, the ability of a presidential campaign to effectively use social media and dominate digital spaces will be critical in shaping national opinion. Traditional in-person campaign events are also made difficult by government lockdowns. As a result, candidates will rely on social media even more than in previous elections to reach out to voters. Misinformation spread via social media has the potential to further divide Philippine society and politics. As a result, each candidate faced a difficult battle in the 2022 elections because only a simple plurality is required to win the presidency. The right mix of outrage, virality, misinformation, and trolling can tip the scales in any candidate's favor, thus making this election very imperative as Filipino voters will decide whether the country's democratic institutions are strengthened or weakened. According to a 2017 survey, Filipinos with internet access trust social media more than mainstream media. 87% said they trust information found on social media. However, with the unreliable internet coverage and the rest of the web effectively paywalled, Filipinos find it difficult, if not possible, to fact-check what they see on their Facebook feed or in Messenger, WhatsApp, or Viber chat, or any other social media platforms. Trolls who post inflammatory content online for attention are common on the internet, particularly in the Philippines. They congregate on online platforms such as Facebook to spread misinformation, occasionally banding together as a misinformation army or troll army. And many of these trolls are not even real people. It is important to note that social media has become a powerful force in the Philippine society. It is an easy and convenient way to consume content, especially since internet connectivity is frequently slow and unreliable. Because of the ease with which social media can sway public opinion, political actors are willing to go to any length to capture the public's attention. On May 9, 2022, at least 65.7 million registered Filipino voters are anticipated to cast ballots in the country's election, aside from the 1.8 million voters overseas. The Filipino people will elect into office the following officials: a president, a vice president, senators, representative from congressional district, party-list organizations, provincial board participants, governor, vice governor of provinces, mayors, vice mayors of municipalities, and city councilors. In the past month, the Philippines have gone on polls of who will be the new elected government officials who will run the country in what analysts say will be the most significant election in the South Asian nation's recent history. Undeniably, in the Philippines, electoral campaigns are quite colorful. The colors define territory, allies, and foes. They help politicians make these relations visible throughout the electoral race. By choosing a certain color, candidates hope to bring their supporters together and get them to work to reach more voters. The colors they choose show how well they are doing or how popular they are in the campaign trail. Supporters are people who support someone or something, for example, a political leader. This is a person who approves of and encourages a public figure, political party, or policy. With this in mind, supporters of their chosen candidate advocate and wear this color during campaigns, rallies, and events. In the 2022 elections held in the country, there are three noticeable colors which have been recognized by many. First is the color pink, by Vice President and Presidential candidate Leni Robredo. In addition, the color red for the Presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos Jr., as well as blue for Presidential candidate Isko Moreno, who is also the current mayor of Manila. For the past month in the country, we have seen a feud of political supporters, to a point where in relationship of family members, relatives, friends have been destroyed. According to the Philippine News Agency, on social media, people in the same family attack and block each other. Even long-term friendships have been broken because of the pressure. They stop being friends on Facebook or Instagram or stop following each other. They don't show up at family gatherings or barkada nights when people with different political views are there. Families have stopped eating together because mealtime has become a political debate session. What's worse is that what's supposed to be a political has become personal, leading to a more hurtful exchange and social distance. This changed what it means to socially distance yourself from someone. Today, several individuals who supported opposing politicians are still at odds with their relatives and close friends due to the fact that quarrels, conflicts, and animosity between families and friends are more personal. They are deeper and more enduring, and some instances reconciliation is impossible. In connection, conflict management is the application of tactics for resolving disagreements and limiting discontent. Techniques for resolving conflicts include facilitating meetings with the parties in conflict to define the issue, explore possible resolutions, and establish the goal that requires the parties' cooperation. Imbued with the above scenario, the case study was conducted to determine the causes and problem of the presidential candidate's supporters' feud in the Philippine elections 2022 and determine solutions to solve the conflict.
Evidently, every communal issue that deals with conflict is always involved with challenges. This kind of host is like a parasite, slowly going into our minds and trying to manipulate us by believing in it and destroying the truth. Fake news and misinformation are very common, based on what is observed on some social networking sites. The supporters of both front runners during the campaign are getting toxic, where integrity is in question by choosing a leader. Supporters of the current vice president who spotted number 2 during the presidential race, the truth, are really trying to combat these kind of issues. On the other hand, the presumptive president supporters always have the right or freedom to choose who they want to lead our country. Sorting through the vast amount of information created and shared online is challenging even for experts. Because of these platforms online, audiences are able to easily access any kind of information they prefer. Based on some real incidents, groups of friends gave their views and opinions towards a candidate, and just like others, it didn't go well. It became more complicated when they hit each other personally because of their mere speculations about the candidate. In sum, one of the challenges in this conflict is the divide in relationships if not handled properly. It could be parents-children, between lovers, or between friends. The hope of every supporter turned them to become more fanatics. They idolized the front runners. They tried to establish good strategies that bring down the different parties. Supporters are fighting, neglecting peace and unity just to prove that they are better. Trolling is one of the problems that escalates. Toxicity just to annoy the opposition, and that is why some of the supporters of the presidential candidates become more aggressive in eliminating trolls through an online dispute. Those are the reasons many supporters become eager and annoyed. There has been widespread misunderstanding and rivalry among presidential supporters. This election 2022 is the most interesting in the Republic of the Philippines because it involves human principles and robs the rights of every individual. Everyone has an opinion on everything from the best president, vice president, pairing to what ailing political parties should do to stay afloat. And as the day of election approaches closer, the disputes are bound to heat up. Many individuals who use social networking sites are susceptible to misinformation. It is quite potent. Misinformation spread by social media threatens to further divide Philippine culture and politics. The stakes for this election are high. Filipino voters will determine whether the country's democratic institutions are strengthened or weakened. Just a simple majority is necessary to win the presidency. The proper mix of fury, vitality, disinformation, and trolling might be enough to shift the scales in any candidate's favor. Cultural differences are one of the issues that come with managing a varied team. Despite the fact that we live in a globalization period in which many cultures are being integrated, there are still certain parts of the world that fiercely stick to their culture. When attempting to employ diverse personnel, it is critical that management recognizes the need to accept and tolerate various cultures. So having different culture perspectives is one of the challenges in every election. Because if one person is firm in his or her beliefs, it is hard for him or her to be pursued even though a candidate has a good advocacy. Another thing that triggered this feud, which gained so much reactions and negative feedback to another party, is that churches, most specifically priests or parishioners, have evidently showed their support to particular candidates. The election fever in our country has been in full motion ever since the official campaign period kicked off. Mass rallies, interviews, political debates involving both national and local candidates happened in every corner of the country. Promises, pledges, and plans have been brought out, as well as throwing mud to opposing candidates. Unfortunately, it does not end only in the candidates, but to the supporters as well. So throwing shades and mocking those who voice out their support to the opponent candidate, and even ending family and friend relationships over principles and who they think is the rightful person for the position. The irony then happened after the election, so opposing or winning candidates have patched up, reconciled, aligned, and even joined forces. This is something ideal for in politics. There are no permanent enemies and friends, only permanent interests. Nothing personal, only politics, as they say. However, the ordinary people who supported them have remained enemies with their friends and families. So fights and disagreements became more personal, deep-seated, and lasting. They believe it's personal, not only politics. We can perceive the toxicity of this kind of atmosphere within a country. It never helped the idea of unification as one nation. With the above-mentioned challenges, it is recommended to other supporters to also do fact checks for you to react properly and rightfully to certain issues that may possibly cause chaos, and just for you to know where to stand. It furtherly spread negative perspective towards the concept of political idealism in general. However, in contrast, this provides an eye-opener to somebody who was unaware of what kind of backgrounds and personalities that a presidential candidates possess. During this election season, it is critical to be aware, and you should always value and respect the truth. Many people disregard it. That is why many people try to combat it and bring back the integrity of everyone. It is given to have a campaign, but note that understanding without judging each other's decision is exceptional, and as individuals, we must have the kind of behavior in this democratic country.
To formally create or to aim for successions of elections, it is crucial to determine first the importance of selecting politicians who have the courage and passion to serve for the people. Second, acquaint the electorate with the basic concepts of democracy and the role of elections in democracy and governance. Third, people should learn how to respect the opinions and decision of each individual. Lastly, be a responsible citizen when it comes to responding and believing the information gathered through social media. We have different beliefs and we just have to respect them. No matter how strong we feel about our own choice of candidates and how much we like others to see them from our lens, it's important that we realize and understand that others also have good reasons for choosing their own candidates. You have your own sets of values, experiences, and beliefs influencing your choice, and they can be right. However, these do not automatically make the values, experiences, and beliefs of others wrong. It's just that they are different. Even family members can have different preferences. Of course, we aim to convince others to see our candidates the way we see them and that they will eventually support them. However, if this does not happen, we should not take this against the other person. It should not be an imposition. It should not be an end to friendship, family relation, when we don't win them on our side. We may discuss, argue, and disagree, but we can still be civil with each other. Instead of judging people based on their choices, let's be more respectful of our differences. When we find ourselves in the middle of a political discussion, it's smart to have an open mind, stay calm, and know when to exit. It will help us avoid saying and doing things that we will most likely to regret later on. Learn to use social media constructively. As social media offers so many benefits, including connecting us with our relatives, friends, and coworkers, especially during this time of pandemic, it has also become a platform of negativity. Fake news is all over social media. Hence, social media is so accessible in instance. It's so easy to post, react, and make negative comments immediately without thinking them through. Comments or feedbacks are often made raw and unfiltered. Disagreements and conflicts usually start from a political post that you made or a comment you made on a post. Emotions are high, harmful words are said, relationships are broken. As instant as our comments are, relationship can also be cut or disconnected in an instant by simply blocking or unfollowing people, especially since most conversations and engagements are now done through social media. We live in a country where democracy exists and is valued. We will often find ourselves agreeing and disagreeing, supporting and contradicting each other, and standing for and against one another. We may even hurt each other's feelings unintentionally. That's how democracy works. However, it does not mean that we have to disrespect, insult, and malign one another. In order to defend the other candidates, we must support. This volume makes the case for why electoral system redesign deserves careful attention as a means of bringing major changes to the way in which politics is done in the Philippines. Any process of electoral system redesign must begin with a clear sense of what national goal or goals it is that one is seeking to promote. In the Philippines, political reformers have often voiced the need for measures that help both to undermine systems of patronage and to promote stronger political parties. To highlight a care observation at the outset, the current combination of electoral systems in the Philippines pretty much guarantees the perpetuation of weak and incoherent political parties. As long as parties are weak and lacking in coherence, the primary focus of political contention is much more likely to be on patronage and pork than on policies and programs. To fix these fundamental ills of the Philippine polity, there is no better reform option than a well-constructed set of changes to the electoral system. This solution is dictated to those who seek to improve the quality of democracy in the Philippines. As is the case anywhere in the world, building better democracy is always a work in progress, and it is an ongoing challenge to ensure that democratic rhetoric is translated into actual democratic substance of value to those at the bottom of society who most need to have their voices heard in the halls of power. The strengthening of institutional foundations is a critical first step to ensuring that democratic system can become more responsive to the citizenry as a whole. In the Philippine context, such a process of institutionalization has the major advantage of building on the wonderfully exuberant spirit that Filipinos have long brought to the practice of democracy.
The national and local elections in the Philippines in May 2022 will be the first to be held in the aftermath of a global pandemic, and the outcome will undoubtedly be influenced by social media. Experts claim that social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and others were never intended to be used for political objectives. Driven by profit, big social media firms have taken advantage of how users share their information, including their political ideologies, opinions, and policy viewpoints. The nature of electoral campaigning appears to match nicely with social media algorithms embedded into the technology. The Philippines is an appropriate site to examine the mobilization power of social media during an election campaign. According to the article of Rivalry, it argues that the 2022 election campaign so far have displayed increasing utility of social media as a highly evolving information and communication technology, which at the same time addresses some of the contact limitations imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Moving on, voting is a crucial part that needs to be seriously faced in society. Presidential campaign includes the thoughts that the candidate wants to share with the voters. It is to get those who agree with their ideas and their plans in the whole duration from campaigning to serving the Filipinos. Each candidate has a lot of notable supporters across several interest groups, sectors, and even past administrations who have different stands and beliefs in choosing the presidential candidate. Listed below are the people and organizations that will benefit the study. This study will benefit those voters who were involved in this feud: young people, government officials, human rights lawyers and advocates, plenty of former and current educators, public figures, and future voters. The young local government officials are devoted to assisting municipal leaders and staff that tackle the management challenges of nowadays and tomorrow. Some argued that a good president should have a good track record of public service, highlighting its honesty and willingness to serve the Filipinos. Human rights lawyers and advocates. As the feud is still existing, the need for human rights lawyers and advocates' assistance is required to inform and impart solutions for each individual's acts. As for human rights lawyers and advocates, the election will give them a lot of ideas in regards to different topics. Each of the candidates will present their own platforms in order to make the country better. Those platforms will eventually give the human rights lawyers and advocates the opportunity to fight for what they believe amidst the rivalry between the candidates in the presidential election. The advocates will support the candidates that fits the advocacy that we are fighting for. That being said, advocates and human rights lawyers will continue to support and will give voters the idea and information of their supported candidates, and it will make it a lot easier for them to choose on whom to vote. Educators. Teacher educators can aid conceivable teachers' gatekeeping practices by asking them to join the educational choices to the features that ground them. They additionally can show off how training activists draw from special goals when discovering out what political troubles and strategies to pursue. Public figures. Since the 1986 People Power movement that ousted dictator Ferdinand Marcos, Bongbong's father, elections in the Philippines have been heavy on the entertainment factor. However, beginning in the last election in 2016, the crossover between showbiz and politics has reached a new level, says Ana Pertiera, an anthropologist at the University of Technology, Sydney, who has previously studied media culture in the Philippines. During the presidential rallies and other activities to gain supporters, celebrities have begun to have an enormous impact on policy, shaping the agenda and the range of the whole Philippines for them to influence the audiences, especially the youth, to also support the candidate that they choose to vote for. This study will benefit celebrities to apprehend their developing functions as a phase of an emerging method for political advocacies. Voters. Campaigns and rallies for the presidential election are concluded, but a lot of individuals are still enrolled for their candidates to inform each candidate's capabilities in leading the country. This study will then serve as a material that will provide them of the effects of feud to their relationships with others, and it will help them on how to better practice their responsibility as voters and avoid conflicts. This study will further give information to the future researchers who aims to investigate the occurrence during the 2022 Philippine election. This study will also provide the material to understanding the challenges a democratic country faces.
This have been the case study of the BSDC2. I hope that you learned something today, and God bless everyone.